In today's video, we're going to be looking at why I think structured outputs and GenUI make a really great combination, and why you should really think about it in your design principles when you're trying to build your chat app or any AI application. So let's just jump into it. First, what is a structured output? A structured output is a way that you can ask large language models to give you an output in a certain structure, whether that's XML or in JSON. Generally, we kind of want it in JSON format because that makes it a lot easier for programmers to put into different subsequent functions down the line. So instead of you trying to pass through a string and grab the variables, you get an object back, which you can just pass to the next function, which just makes coding a lot easier and more familiar for most other programmers. But there are reasons why you would want to use an XML and actually extract some of the text output rather than use JSON, because sometimes the LMs are a bit more creative or a bit more consistent with an XML format compared to a JSON. All depends on the model you're using, but that gives you a quick rundown on a structured output. Why is structured output so good? Well, you kind of know what you're getting each time. It simplifies the output, and if it doesn't match, there's an error. And this just helps make everything downstream a lot easier if you know what's coming in. Let's jump to the next one. What is GenUI? Well, GenUI actually just means generative UI. And we also have another term for it. It's like artifacts is another big term in the industry. And if you've used Claude or any of the other popular software out there, like within ChatGPT with Canvas mode, you'll see these elements that pop up on the screen where you can interact with them according to what you actually put in as a prompt. And that's generally GenUI. So it kind of makes the UI experience a lot more interactive, and you can actually do a lot more with AI applications. Why have I picked these two things? Well, I kind of think where the future is going is not just what's AI doing, but how we interact with it. And if we don't have a good way of interacting with the AI, or it's not fun for the user, we might not get as much engagement as we want to. And where these two kind of interlocked is if you've got structured outputs coming in, you can then use certain components based on those outputs to populate your GenUI. So, all right, we're going to jump into some code. So on the screen, you'll see I've got this large language model. All right, let's jump into some code. So on the screen, you'll see I'm using a structured output. And in this case, it's actually a stream object. So I'm actually streaming a structured output back to the user and then rendering it in real time for them. So they don't have to wait for the whole LM call to be finished before I show anything on screen. Just makes a better UI experience, just so you get the general points. And let's just jump through. You'll see one thing I'm doing quite a bit in here. I'm actually asking it to respond in JSON in the prompt. I find the more you do the more you enforce or few shot prompt it to actually give you the output that you want, the better the result can be. But you should always do your own evals and make sure this is always the case for the model that you're using in the use case. But anyway, in this case, I'm just asking it for clarification on what they're trying to search for. And I'm also just giving it example outputs of how it should respond back. And you can see here, I'm just streaming it back to the user. Essentially, what's happening, just so you understand this whole flow, is I'm actually the user. This is a perplexity clone, I should say that first. So the user has a query that comes in. They could just be for exercise, for example, but that's quite broad. And what I want the LM to do is when it's going through the paces, notice that this is it's not specific enough. So the results, what we might give back to the user might not be great. So instead of just asking the user for a question to clarify, I actually wanted to maybe prompt the user which of these sections sounds the most interesting that you would like research to have. So I feel like that will be a better experience than just typing each time. So I then tell the LM, you need to make different options. And then according to whatever comes back as a response for that option, then we will do the search and then display that to the user. But to generate these questions, we're telling the LLM to respond in a structured output format that we can then query the user on. And this is very powerful. So this is jumping back into this. You'll see here, we're processing the events, and you'll see here if it is an inquiry object. So this is just the checks and balances. This is a workflow I was building that you can jump through each one. So this is very powerful. So let's just have a quick look what this looks like in action. All right, so we're gonna have a quick look at what this looks like in action. All right, we're gonna have a quick look what this looks like in action. So like I said, we're gonna say something very broad, exercise in this case. And my LLM is not really gonna know what's happening. You'll see on the screen, I'm telling it, these are we thinking of some questions for clarification. And then we're actually outputting the result here. And here we're saying we're giving the user an option to actually enter additional information, or it can actually choose from the selected options that we give it. Is your target audience for the content, beginners, fitness, or seniors, or athletes? And what is the core message you want to convey about this exercise? So this one, I was in the middle of editing for content creation research agent. I just never finished it. I do apologize. I forgot about that. But needless to say, you can see the ideas around this. You can prompt the user for better information back than asking the user to type everything. And I like this approach because it makes it feel better for the user. And submit. Now it will then go and do all this research for us and push it through. So this one is just generating a result. And you can see we can do some follow-up questions. But this just feels really powerful in terms of interacting and how it's being generated to the user. It just feels a bit more natural. All right, there's one more example I want to jump into, which is having a bit more of a canvas feel. So we know structured outputs is really great to refine what's coming back and forward. We know you don't always need to use that. Sometimes you can just use a general prompt and have a state flag in your workflow to say when things are coming, to render certain things on the screen and whatnot. But structured outputs make this a lot better. So let's just take this one. I'm going to just ask it to help me write a tweet. Let's just say AI replace. All right. So this one's going to just do a function calling. It's going to analyze each one, and then it's going to generate our prompt. And you can see here, I'm actually using XML format. I actually haven't rendered any additional UI on the front end, which I could do later. And you can see everything's coming in this Twitter thread, and then it's got tweet 1, tweet 8 at the end, and then it ends again in the Twitter thread. So I can essentially pass through for each of these and then display them in their own components. And this could be quite useful if you're trying to make a multi-threaded tweet just on the screen. And what's nice is you can edit this, and this actually then will help the next prompt that I do. So we should get this out. This is say we want to maybe up the reading level to graduate. And we can just ask the LM to do that for us. And it's just going to do that output and push it out. And what's nice is we can then also just view our changes to see what changed. And we should see that our change there was gone. And what's nice is we making this whole experience of just working with the AI a lot more friendlier, and it just feels a bit more natural. You don't need to jump between copy and paste and re-edit. You can just edit in the window and send a result back to your large language model and get a response back and generate it in your own UI. Now, this is kind of where I think a lot of things are going, but having structured outputs somewhere in your LM applications can make certain tasks a lot easier, especially if you need to prompt the user for something or you need certain trigger events to happen. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, and see you in the next one.